propose strengthening the sanctuary law in the wake of the killing in Minneapolis. President Trump takes a turn against guns, partially blaming Alex Preddy's concealed carry for Saturday's tragedy. How gun rights groups are reacting. And Commander Bavino, we hardly knew ye. The controversial and blustery Border Patrol officer is sidelined. Will he return as he's vowed to do?
And welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Paris Schutz. The killing of Minneapolis protester Alex Preddy is reverberating all the way here in Chicago. A group of alders today advanced a measure that would enhance the city's welcoming city ordinance. Under this tweak, COPA, or the Civilian Office on Police Accountability, would be empowered to investigate if police officers cooperate on immigration enforcement against the stated aim of the sanctuary law. These alders say the proposal is urgent because of what happened in Minneapolis.
Every single day we work to uphold the values of a welcoming city. This amendment to the COPA ordinance is doing just that. It's making sure that we have the infrastructure and the systems to hold people accountable.
If we don't make these changes now, I fear for what it will look like between now and March when ICE does come back.
And joining us now is 38th Ward Alderman Nick Sposato from over there by O'Hare. Alderman Sposato, thanks for joining us. How do you feel about this tweak here where COPA would have the ability to investigate if a police officer is violating the welcoming city law?
I thought that was kind of a nothing burger. I don't think that's any big deal of that. I'm certainly against the welcoming city, as you know, but law is law, so I didn't really have a problem with it. But, you know, some of my colleagues are out for blood. And, you know, they want it for the wrong reasons. So I did support it temporarily for now until I get a little bit further information.
All right. So you supported it now, but it sounds like you're not really a fan. You're not a fan of sanctuary laws. You're not a fan of this tweak. So why support it then?
Well, I didn't mind a tweak. I mean, it just, you know, because they're just going to keep complaining about everything. The fix is on. They're having all kind of problems. So if no matter what the investigation comes out, if the investigation is not in their favor, they're not going to be happy. Just like, you know, the people that got killed in Minnesota, they don't care about an investigation. It doesn't make a difference. An investigation says it was valid. They're still going to be in an uproar. So that's what these lefty loons do. They're never happy with anything unless the outcome is in their favor.
Well, let me ask you this, Alderman. The meeting got a little heated, and you got into an argument with some of the sponsors of this ordinance. What was that over?
Well, the only heated stuff was really with me. I mean, it was just procedurally the way they were doing it, the way they started off the meeting. Very, you know, you'd think they would be unbiased, but it was a very biased start of the meeting. You know, we can't control public comment. My issue is not with public comment. You could say whatever you want, but certainly the chair was very biased. Certainly the deputy mayor of Immigrant and Refugee Rights, when she sends her condolences to the family of Good and Preddy, but not to Lake and Riley and Rachel Morin. So I gave her an out to send her condolences, but she refused, and her snap back to me was, they're not illegal.
So some bickering over that. Let me ask you, how does this work, though? If COPA investigates a cop, let's say that that cop is assisting in some kind of immigration enforcement, even if the immigration agent doesn't provide a judicial warrant, what's the recourse then?
Yeah, we don't know what the consequences would be. I'm guessing a slap on the wrist, don't do this anymore. I mean, the cops are going to be following orders from higher ranking cops. So I don't know what it does other than makes them happy they got an ordinance. Like I said, I felt it was kind of a nothing burger. Kind of wish that CPD would have been there, but they weren't. But he did give his statement saying he supports it. So
how do you believe the sanctuary law for the city should be altered?
Well, we shouldn't be supporting people that are here illegally and criminals. I mean, President Obama spoke against it. President Clinton spoke against it. Now that President Trump is against it, now it's a bad thing. I mean, we can't be, Paris, you and I both know the far majority of these people are law-abiding people, just want to make a better life for their family. I don't have a problem with that, but there is a legal process to go through. I know people that have been through the process, waited forever to come here legally. They had to wait in line. Everybody has to wait in line. You can't jump in line, circumvent the process. Once again, President Obama spoke out viciously against it or vigorously against it. So there's a process. You have to come here. You have to come here legally. You can't be here illegally. And I don't know why these people are protecting hardened criminals. MS-13 type people, molesters, rapists, drug dealers. I don't get it. I really don't.
At the same time, you see President Trump taking a new tack today, sidelining Bovino, even calling him kind of out there. What's your reaction to the change of pace here? Because Bovino was pretty much the front man for all the actions in Chicago starting in September.
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that. I don't know if he did it just to calm things down. I don't know if they really have a rift between them. I mean, he's following orders. That's what he did. So as far as I know, I mean, I don't think he was just a renegade out there doing what he wanted on his own. They seemed pretty happy with him in the beginning. And those two unfortunate incidents certainly weren't Bovino's fault. And once again, I'm not going to put blame on anybody right now till an investigation comes out. And I will side with the investigation. Unlike a lot of the lefty loons, they will not side with the investigation if it doesn't come out in their favor.
All right, Alderman Nick Spizzato, 38th Ward, great to talk to you.
Thanks, Paris. Thanks for having me on.
All right, take care now. Well, politics does make strange bedfellows. Gun rights groups have come out criticizing statements from DHS, the FBI, and President Trump. Those statements insinuated that Preddy's killing was partially caused by his decision to conceal and carry during Saturday's protest. And President Trump doubled down on some of those statements today.
He was acting as an assassin in Minneapolis.
Who is that?
Mr. Schutz, your deputy chief of staff said
not
that.
isn't it? No.
Oh,
With that being said, you know, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns. You just can't. And you can't, listen, you can't walk in with guns. You can't do that. But it's a very unfortunate incident. You know?
And joining us now is Ed Sullivan from the Illinois State Rifle Association and Bill Sack from the Second Amendment Foundation. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Ed Sullivan, a former Republican lawmaker here in Illinois. Good to talk to you again. What do you make of those recent comments from the president, basically saying you can't come to an event like this with a gun?
Well, certainly we would need clarification of what he truly meant. We know that you have a constitutional right to stand there lawfully and have a firearm in the state of Illinois. I helped write the Concealed Carry Act of 2013, and so we know what the law is. Now, did the president mean that you can't interfere with law enforcement and have a firearm? I still believe you have that right as long as you're acting lawfully, but if you are going to have a firearm and you're going to attack a law enforcement officer, you're not really acting responsibly at that point. And I'm not trying to, lay blame on what took place up in Minnesota. I'm talking general.
In general. Bill Sack, your reaction to what you heard from the president?
I mean, I think, unfortunately, without trying to guess what the president meant, what he said, regrettably, is just factually incorrect. It's entirely lawful to carry a permitted concealed firearm at a public gathering or a protest in Minnesota. It's also constitutionally protected conduct. So if the administration is interested in clarifying its comments to talk about unlawful conduct, it's welcome, or conduct, it's welcome to do so. But just simply stating that it's unlawful, unconstitutional, or accepting some sort of personal risk of state violence because you choose to concealed carry in public, that's just incorrect.
Ed Sullivan, you were talking in general. You don't want to impede or mess around with law enforcement if you are carrying. From what you've seen in that video, did it look to you like Alex Preddy did anything improper with his weapon? It certainly no evidence has come out to this point that he brandished it at any time.
Listen, we all have kind of looked at the videos that have taken place, and everybody's going to have their own opinion, whether he was interfering, whether he was peacefully helping, whether he was directing traffic, whether he was helping a woman on the side of the road. And so I'm not going to comment on what I believe that he has done. Certainly, we're going to allow the information to come out with the authorities. We still have not seen body cam footage on what has taken place. But at the end of the day, the authorities are going to do a thorough review, and ISRA has asked for a thorough review, one that has transparency. And so we can all put this behind us one way or the other, whether there are charges or there are not charges.
Bill, that question to you. From what you've seen, do you see any kind of improper behavior with the gun that would have warranted him being fatally shot in this, based on what we've seen?
So, analysis of a particular incident involving a concealed carrier is just not what we do here at Second Amendment Foundation. We're here to make sure that every peaceable American has the right to carry their gun in public as the Constitution provides. How a particular law enforcement incident plays out and the investigation thereafter is just not something that we comment on or something that speaks to our expertise. We're here to make sure that the leaders of this country understand what everyone's constitutional rights are and are respectful of those. And in large part, the administration has done a relatively good job. The DOJ Civil Rights Division has done an exceptional job thus far with the right to carry, and we would recommend that some other folks in the administration maybe listen to what they have to say.
Ed Sullivan, what is the law in Illinois in terms of concealed carry? We certainly have lots of protests here in Illinois. We've seen folks brandish weapons on both sides of the political aisle. We saw it on January 6th. We've seen it in protest after protest. So what's the situation in Illinois? Can you show up to an event like this and conceal and carry a weapon?
So Illinois has, to answer your question is yes, you have the right to show up to a protest, a lawful protest, and concealed carry. There are some exceptions. We have what's called prohibited places, 22 prohibited places in Illinois, one of which is if there is a formal permitted event. And so some could say that the Broadview protests were a permitted event because the mayor declared certain hours that you could carry. And so in that case, we have in Illinois, and I'm not talking to the rest of the state, we have one specific instance where potentially you could be carrying in error. Would someone get charged with that? I don't know. We'd have to see. But as it relates to what I saw in the video, in Illinois, you would absolutely have a right to carry a firearm as long as you're doing it lawfully.
And Bill, how would the Second Amendment Foundation kind of encourage folks that like to protest, that also are very, very much want to express their Second Amendment rights? How should they behave in public in an event like this?
Sure. I mean, I think the answer is you would behave the way you would anywhere else while you're carrying your firearm, or just generally. Of course, as a good, peaceable member of society, your job is to act in accordance with just generally being kind and acceptable in public. And that responsibility is even more so when you have the ability to exert deadly force at a distance tucked in your waistband. So that's no different if you are going to the supermarket or if you are going to exercise your First Amendment rights in a peaceable manner.
Ed Sullivan, and I know, again, you don't want to comment specifically on what happened here, but for the folks that started laying part of the blame on this protester's decision to carry, there are other folks that called out, well, remember Kyle Rittenhouse in Kenosha back in 2020, I believe, or 2021, where he carried a semi-automatic weapon, and after an altercation, he did kill somebody, although he was acquitted. He was found to have not done anything wrong here. Is it fair to say, well, if Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted, if Kyle Rittenhouse was within his rights to carry his weapon at that protest, then this man was within his rights?
Listen, I think ISRA's position is both instances you have a right to carry a firearm in these protests. I don't know specific Wisconsin law, but it seems like it would be in Illinois, if that same thing happened, you would have an absolute right to carry a firearm. In the point he was, in Rittenhouse is different in that it was open carry and he was on private property, versus this is concealed carry, which is a different animal altogether. Now, in both instances, you certainly have to be a responsible party, and that certainly will be debated for years to come.
Right. I think the debate over Rittenhouse was he responsible? We know that he was not guilty of murder, but was he responsible with the way that he had acted with his weapon? How about that to you, Bill? Are these apples to apples or apples to orange comparisons here?
I think they're very much apples to oranges in terms of, the underlying events, what happened there. I think that there are lots of things that are different, but I think that Ed is right, is that the underlying principle of being protected by the Constitution to carry a firearm, while you're exercising your other rights, remains constant through both. How the gentleman acted or how the events unfolded in their specific instances are obviously entirely different. But in general, their right to be armed while they are at a protest remains the same.
All right, Ed Sullivan from the Illinois State Rifle Association and Bill Sack from the Second Amendment Foundation, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you
for having us.
All right, when we come back, Greg Bovino, he's gone, or is he? We dive deep into the controversial and now sidelined Border Patrol leader. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, we hardly knew ye. Bovino, of course, the leading man for Operation Midway Blitz, that mass deportation effort that had stated goal of deporting violent undocumented criminals. But instead, his Customs and Border Patrol officers engaged in a months-long dragnet, stopping folks for, quote, probable cause at places like Millennium Park and throughout the city and suburbs. So let's look back on some of Greg Bovino's key moments here in Chicago. Back when the weather was still warm and beautiful, who could forget Bovino leading Border Patrol agents in a convoy down the Chicago River? Camera crew in tow. Images later released in an action-packed hype video set to heavy metal music to announce their arrival here in Chicago. Then there was the Sun-Times reporter that caught him around Chicago's downtown asking what reasonable suspicion he used to stop random folks for their papers. And he responded, oh, well, there's, quote, articulable facts. But he assured that it wasn't based on skin color. And then this Kodak moment, tossing tear gas during an operation in Little Village. Later in court, he said he'd been hit in the head with an object before he tossed a canister. Then he admitted that wasn't true. And it prompted a federal judge to conclude he was, quote, outright lying. And then, of course, there's whatever this was, when he was leaving the federal courthouse. And another thing we'll remember about Bovino, he really liked using social media, especially to respond to critics, saying things like, quote, not now, partner, and thanking the folks that sang his praises. Bovino now is sidelined. The Trump administration paying a political price for Bovino's bluster and bravado. Trump even today saying he's, quote, out there sometimes, and maybe it's not good, maybe it's good other times. And this is amid a growing chorus of Republicans who say that these aggressive tactics are really costing them politically. So who is Bovino? Where did he come from? How is he empowered with so much authority? Joining us now is Chicago Sun-Times reporter Dan Mihalopoulos, who has traced his story back to North Carolina, where he grew up. Hey, Dan, you really dug into Bovino and his background. You interviewed old wrestling coaches, neighbors, colleagues. Who is Greg Bovino?
Yeah, that's the question we had. He came here and he said, "This is our city." That's what he said to his agents, and we're going to take it back. Well, it's not his city, it's our city. And we were wondering, who is this guy that thinks he owns this town? And we just basically, what we call in investigative reporting, we scrubbed him. I worked together with Lauren Fitzpatrick from the Sun Times. She went up to North Carolina where he grew up. I went out to El Centro, California by the border with Mexico, where Bovino was the chief and where he might be headed back now, because that is his title, the chief of that 70-mile sector of the border between California and Mexico. Of course, the only reason we know him is he's been let loose over the whole country. Chicago, Charlotte, before Chicago was LA, and then apparently Minneapolis with, I think you did a good summary, a lot of bravado, a lot of bluster. And at the end of the day, it was his agents who killed Nurse Alex Preddy, and it was Bovino who tried to justify it with things that were frankly lies. He called Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist, or suggested that he was an assassin, that he went out to kill the agents, that the agents were the victims, and Alex Preddy was a suspect. And that apparently was too far, finally. And Tom Homan from ICE is going to be in charge of the deportation campaign in Minneapolis from now on. We don't know where Bovino is going.
And Bovino and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem immediately with those comments. He's a domestic terrorist. This is the kind of the playbook they used with Renee Good and many other times when they're combating some of the protests that bubble up. But clearly, the Trump administration and Republicans saw that they weren't going to win the messaging war here and the narrative, as all the videos seemed to dispute the things that they were saying. So they had to change course. But this bravado, this bluster, is this something that he is known for in his post in El Centro?
Yeah, absolutely. When we were out there by the border, we found that although he's a company man and he's very much proud to be a Border Patrol guy, he's been with them since 1996, started his career in El Centro, was the chief since 2020. He did try to distinguish himself at the same time. He did try to stand out, and he invited right-wing cable channel out to El Centro, to Calexico, California, actually right on the border, to watch him put up what he called a secondary border wall parallel to Trump's fence. Bovino's wall, we found out, was not as long as he said he was. They boasted that it would be a mile long. It's still only 0.15 miles long. And Bovino's fence is also a lot shorter. People there don't really think it's doing much good. Another time he jumped in an irrigation canal, which forms part of the border between California and Mexico, and invited the media to show them how dangerous it is. People thought he was a bit of a showboat. And behind that showboating, though, is an agency that allegedly has a very deeply ingrained culture of the sort of things that we've seen in Chicago and Minneapolis and Charlotte and other cities. It's been going on along the border, we found out, for a very long time. Excessive force, and also them charging people with attacking them falsely, which was, of course, we've seen in Chicago.
And we see, some of those tactics used in Chicago and Minneapolis, and we've spoken to law enforcement folks here, like Eddie Johnson, former superintendent, saying a lot of these things CPD outlawed decades ago. The high-speed chases, the using the car purposely to T-bone another car to stop it. The constant tear gassing, which Johnson told me CPD found it not effective, but they really liked using this. Why do you believe the administration chose Bovino to become pretty much the leading man across the country in these deportation efforts? And would you say there's a clear distinction here between the way Customs and Border Patrol is operated and ICE, which has gotten a lot of the blame, but sometimes people blame ICE when they really mean Customs and Border Patrol?
Why Bovino? We're not really sure who tapped him on the shoulder. What we do know is that he went from being in charge of a 70-mile sector of the border to suddenly answering directly to the DHS secretary, to a cabinet member in Kristi Noem. And what we do know at that time was that Greg Bovino made a raid in Central California, far from the border, where he was doing the same sorts of things we've seen in Chicago, these sort of indiscriminate raids where he's, like, I saw him at a Costco at Randhurst Mall in Mount Prospect, going up to Asian people and asking them if they were American just based on their looks, I mean, this one woman was born here, spoke like you and I do, being native-born Chicagoans, and she was shocked. Another guy was from China, and he showed his green card. So Bovino was doing that in California right before the transition, in the transition period between Biden and Trump. And then suddenly he is freed to become commander at large instead of chief of El Centro. And now he's going from one city to another, doing those same sorts of things. Now, you ask what's the difference between ICE and Border Patrol? A lot of people, as bad of a reputation as ICE has, particularly with protesters, a lot of people believe that Border Patrol is far, far worse.
And it seems like President Trump is responding to that notion right now and sidelining Border Patrol and maybe returning a lot of these duties to ICE. But you mentioned your colleague went to North Carolina where he grew up and talked to people. What did they learn about his background?
It was pretty unremarkable, except for one thing that devastated his family when he was, I think, 12 years old. Greg Bovino talks about dedicating Operation Midway Blitz here in Chicago and other efforts now. He's 50-something years old, 55 years old, I think, and he's dedicated these efforts to people who are victims of drunk drivers who happen to be undocumented or illegal, as he called them. Well, his dad, when Greg Bovino was 12, got completely loaded and killed a woman in a DUI crash, went to prison for a short time, and that had to have a huge impact on Greg Bovino, although he wouldn't give us an interview. But yeah, I mean, he was basically in a single parent environment after his father did that in the mountains of North Carolina when he was just a boy.
So maybe a formative event there. For those that aren't terminally on social media, unfortunately, we have to be on it a lot to see the news. He was really on it all the time, all day long, wasn't he?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if he clapped back. Is that the term that the kids use now? If he clapped back at you, Paris, he did. Just a few days. I think the day before, 2 days before Alex Preddy was killed in Minneapolis by Border Patrol agents. I had commented on the kid that was 5 years old that was detained, and Bovino clapped back at me and replied, and he said, you should be sad about the parents that abandoned him. That's not the kind of people I want in my country. And immediately all these either real people or just bots would praise him and tell us that we were liars and fake news and whatnot. And Greg Bovino seemed to really revel in that. He would follow back anybody who praised him, even though
some of these accounts might have been bots and not real. Dan, I should mention you have a podcast on WBEZ, Becoming Bovino. It aired tonight. You can catch it online. And we are out of time right now for the show. We're back tomorrow night with more Chicago Report. Stay warm, everybody. Good night.